Okay, so question number 7 is the last question in the homework for section 2.4 that has to do with the empirical rule. So the problem says the mean value of land and buildings per acre from a sample of farms is $1,300 with a standard deviation of $200. And it says the data set has a bell-shaped distribution. It's like using the empirical rule, determine which of the following farms, okay, whose land and building values per acre are given. All right, so determine which of these farms have values that are unusual, which means they are more than 2 standard deviations from the mean. And then lastly, it asks, are there any of the data values that are very unusual, okay, which are more than 3 standard deviations from the mean? Okay, so once again, to answer this question, I've copied over the diagram for the empirical rule, and then I've filled in the values according to the mean and standard deviation given in that problem. Okay, so the mean of 1300 goes in the middle, okay, and then you get the values that are 1 standard deviation to the left and 1 standard deviation to the right. So likewise, the values that are 2 standard deviations to the left and 2 standard deviations to the right, and so on. All right, so since I can't fit every number in this diagram, I had to abbreviate. So the capital letter K is an abbreviation that's used for 1000. Okay, so for example, 0.7K, all right, is equal to 0.7 times 1000. Okay, so 0.7K represents $700. Okay, likewise, 1.5K is equal to 1.5 times 1000, okay, which is 1500. Okay, so 1.5K is equal to 1500. Okay, so knowing where these values are in your diagram, you can answer the question, right? Which of the farms are unusual, meaning that they are more than 2 standard deviations away from the mean, and then it says select all that apply. Okay, so you can quickly reference the diagram that we just made, okay, and determine that, okay, 0.9K or $900 there's 2 standard deviations to the left, and likewise 1.7K or 1700 is 2 standard deviations to the right. So values that are either less than $900 or greater than $1,700 are going to be unusual. All right, so then you would select your answers accordingly. So I'm not going to do this problem, but that's how you would approach it when you do it on your own. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and skip over to the next question. Okay, and question 8 says, sample annual salaries in thousands of dollars for employees at a company are listed. So this is the data. Okay, and we're going to do parts A, B, C, and D. Okay, so in part A, it asks us to find the sample mean and sample standard deviation. So what we're going to do is copy the data set into StackCrunch. Okay, and paste the data in an empty column in our spreadsheet. Okay, and we want the sample mean, okay, and the sample standard deviation. Okay, so we're going to go to the stat menu, select summary stats and columns. Okay, since our data set is in a single column, okay, so it's column 7, or the column titled var7, okay, that has our data. So we're going to select that column. Okay, we simply want the mean and the standard deviation. So go ahead and select those, holding down the control button, and then click compute. Okay, so our mean is about 46.3. Okay, we're going to round that to 1 decimal place, so 46.3 will be our answer, so that's to 1 decimal place. Okay, and then the sample standard deviation was 8.6, so rounded to 1 decimal place, that'll be 8.6. Okay, so to answer part B, right, we have to read the question first. So the question says, each employee in the sample is given a 5% raise. Okay, then it says find the sample mean and the sample standard deviation for the revised data set. Okay, so let's think about how we're going to do this first, and then I'll talk about how to do this in StackCrunch. Okay, so when an employee is given a 5% raise, right, that means that their salary is going to increase by 5%. Okay, so just as an example, let's say that the employee's salary is $50,000 per year. Okay, and remember the problem abbreviates the data. Okay, so I'm going to convert the 50,000 into 50K. Okay, so 50,000 is equal to 50K. Right, if we do 50,000 divided by 1,000, you get the number 50. Okay, and remember the letter capital K stands for 1,000. So 50 multiplied by 1,000 is 50,000. So we can abbreviate 50,000 just by writing it as 50K. All right, so let's say that the employee salary increases by 5%. Okay, so the employee's salary increases by 5%. Okay, so what you want to do is, first of all, find 5% of 50,000. Okay, so 5% of 50K, okay, is going to be equal to 0.05 multiplied by 50. Okay, so when you find a percent of a number, right, you convert the percentage into a decimal. So 5% converted into a decimal is 0.05. So to convert a percent to a decimal, right, you divide it by 1,000 or divide it by 100. Okay, so you get 0.05. Okay, and then you take that decimal and multiply by the number that you're finding the percentage of. So 0.05 multiplied by 50. Okay, so number 2.5. Okay, so that's equal to 2.5K. All right, which remember, okay, when you write that out normally, so 2.5 times 1,000 is equal to 2,500. So a 5% raise translates into a raise of $2,500. Okay, so the employees new salary is 50,000 plus 2,500. Okay, so 5% of 50,000 ended up being 2,500. Okay, so when we add those two numbers together, 50,000 plus 2,500, okay, we get the employee's new salary. So 50,000 plus 2,500, okay, it's 52,500. Okay, so the employee's final salary after the 5% raise is 52,500. Okay, and we can rewrite that as 52.5K. Okay, to abbreviate it to express the employee salary in thousands of dollars, right? We take the 52,500 divided by 1,000. Okay, so we get 52.5 and write that as 52.5K. Okay, so going back to the question, right? It says each employee in the sample is given a 5% raise, and we want to find the sample mean and sample standard deviation for the revised data set. Okay, so what we want to do is calculate the new salary for each employee. All right, you can see that's a lot of work, even for this fairly small data set. Okay, so before we go and do that in StackCrunch, right, so I showed you how to calculate a 5% increase in an employee's salary if they make $50,000 per year. Okay, and it ended up being 52,500. Okay, so a quicker way to get that answer without having to do all this work, okay, is to take the number 5%, okay, which is equal to 0.05 as a decimal, right? So you take the percentage, whatever it is, divided by 100 to convert it into a decimal. Okay, and then add 1 to it. Okay, add 1. Okay, so we're always going to add 1 since it's an increase by 5%. Okay, so we get that number 1.05. Okay, and if you multiply that by the employee's salary, okay, right, we get the new salary. Okay, which is 52,500. Okay, and if the employee's salary is expressed in thousands of dollars, okay, so 50,000 instead of 50K instead of 50,000, right? It's the same principle, right? So take the percentage, in this case 5%, divided by 100. Okay, we go 0.05, add 1 to it. Okay, then multiply by the current salary. Okay, and we get the employee's new salary in thousands of dollars, which is 52.5. Okay. So what we now need to do is figure out how to do that in StackCrunch for all the data values. Okay, so let's go back to the problem. Okay, we already have the data in StackCrunch, so we don't need to copy it over again. Okay, so the data are in column 7. Okay, so what we're now going to do is go to Data, select Compute, and we're going to select Expression. Okay, and in this empty slot here, we're going to input our expression, so we're going to build it. So we're going to click Build. Okay, so the column that we're going to select is column 7. That's the column that contains our data set. Okay, so we're going to multiply each value in our data set by 1.05. Okay, since it's a 5% increase. So we're going to select var7. Okay, click it twice so that var7 appears here. Okay, and multiplication is represented by the little star here. We're going to multiply that by 1.05. Okay, since 1.05 represents a 5% increase in the salary, so the current salaries multiplied by 1.05, okay, will give us the employees' new salaries, okay, with a 5% increase. So we're going to click Compute. Okay, so the employees' new salaries are here. Okay, and what we want to do with that is find the mean and standard deviation. So we're going to go to Stat, Summary Stats, select the columns. Okay, so the column that contains the employees' new salaries is that column. Okay, and we want the mean and standard deviation. Okay, so the mean is 48.6 now. Okay, and then the standard deviation is now 9.07, so rounded to one decimal place, that's 9.1. So that 0 gets rounded up to a 1, so the answer is 9.1. Okay, that's how you do part B. Okay, so in part C it says, to calculate the monthly salary, divide each original salary by 12. Okay, and then find the sample mean and sample standard deviation for the revised data set. Okay, so what we're going to do is go back to StackCrunch. Okay, so you want to take the data values in here, which are the employees' current salaries. Okay, and we're going to divide them by 12. All right, so in StackCrunch, we're going to go to Data, select Compute, and click on Expression. Okay, so we're going to select Build. Okay, select column 7, which contains the original data, and the slash here means divide, so we're going to select that, and then enter the number 12, and click OK. So it's going to divide every value in that column by 12, and then we're going to click Compute. Okay, so in this column, it divides every single one of these values by 12. Okay, so what we now want to do is find the mean and standard deviation. So we go to Stat, Summary Stats, Columns. Okay, select that column, select the mean and standard deviation, click Compute. So when you round the mean and standard deviation to one decimal place, the mean is approximately 3.9, and the standard deviation is approximately 0.7. Okay, so I've already entered the answers, and both of them correct. So the sample mean was 3.9, and the sample standard deviation was